Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Wednesday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist David Percy. Up first graphic is the Aurora Outlook. There we go. Aurora Viewing Outlook produced Wednesday afternoon, today, August 17th, and there's a moderate G2 class geomagnetic storm in progress, and this is expected to continue through Thursday. An active aurora will be visible in Alaska, where skies are clear and may be visible as far south as the northern continental U.S. And of course, mid to late August marks the beginning of the aurora viewing season in Alaska, with daylight shortening and night skies becoming darker. So, moving on, heavy rainfall. This is kind of shows a contrast across the Chugach Mountains and Turnagain Arm of the rainfall in this type of pattern, southeast flow. And you can see Portage picking up 24-hour rainfall amount of 4 1/3 inches, while Mount Alyeska just under 2 inches. Contrast on the other side of the mountains, Anchorage International Airport had just 9/100 of an inch, and Merrill Field just 3/100 of an inch. So it really is a good example of the windward side the Portage and Mount Alyeska are on, and the lee side of the mountains that Anchorage and Merrill Field are on. And from there, heavy rain also occurring over the northern panhandle, and there's a flood warning, the watch now warning for the Taya River. That's until 10:15 a.m. tomorrow morning, and crest above moderate flood stage at 17 feet Wednesday evening, and that's for the Taya River near Skagway, and again until 10:15 Thursday morning. And noting that at 16.8 feet, portions of the Chilkoot Trail begin to inundate with water to ankle depth. And at 17 feet, NPS advises against boating and other activities. Trail orientation navigation begin to become difficult and may hinder route finding. Water will be knee deep or higher, and you can see the crest expected at 17 feet, I believe, there on the chart, or a little above that tomorrow morning. And looking at the hazardous weather graphics, we got a wind advisory out until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Or let's see, wind advisory till 10 a.m. Thursday, that's correct, for the eastern Alaska range for pretty strong winds from the south at 30 to 40 miles an hour sustained, with gusts to 60 miles an hour. And of course, that includes Donnelly Dome, Mineral Lake, and Delta Junction. Also a wind advisory out for the Yukon Flats and surrounding uplands for until 10 p.m. Thursday evening, or from 10 p.m. this evening until 6 p.m. Thursday, so all day tomorrow and later tonight through tomorrow. And that's for winds not as strong as in the Alaska range, but still looking at 20 to 30 mile per hour winds with gusts to 45 miles an hour in the Yukon Flats. And from there, satellite imagery showing moisture flowing from south to north with the front pushing eastward, bringing pretty strong winds into Lynn Canal today to go along with the heavy rain. Winds gusting 40 to 50 miles an hour in Lynn Canal there ahead of the front, and front weakening the farther south you go, so conditions are lighter down along the south coast. And a break behind that front on, again, the lee side of the mountains, the Alaska Range, cleared skies out in the Fairbanks area, and they reached 75 degrees this afternoon, with 70s across much of the upper Tanana Valley area, mid and upper Tanana Valley. Otherwise, another batch of moisture bringing some more rain in across the Kenai Peninsula and extending back to the northwest there to the Yukon River. Then a break along the southwest coast into the northern Bering Sea. A lot of clouds with the next system spreading eastward into the Pribilof Islands and across the southwest coastal areas. A pretty heavy rain with that. Montague Island had a 24-hour amount of 5 1/4 inches of precipitation, and over in the northern panhandle, Pelican picked up 3 1/4 inches, with Haines having over 1.5 inches of rainfall. On the chart there, you can see the low center there just south of the central Yukon River, but the south to north flow across the Alaska Range, again drying it out, all the precipitation getting wrung out in the south side of the mountains. That same sort of pattern occurred in the Copper River Basin as well. So dry on up into the Yukon Flats, and then the rain increases over the central and southern, or the central and eastern Brooks Range on the southern slopes, and water levels expected to rise there in the rivers and streams of the Brooks Range, but not expected to reach flood stage. Otherwise, rain changes to showers and scatters out toward the southwest coast, and the next system spreading rain into the central Aleutians along with wind. Pretty tight gradient on the back side of that, so it looks like gale force winds coming into the far western Aleutians tonight. Rain spreads almost to Nikolsky and doesn't quite make it to the Pribilofs ahead of that front. Otherwise, rain starts to taper off over the Panhandle with the front moving through and washing out pretty quickly there. And so showers toward morning, much lighter rainfall amounts. Periods of light rain and fog continue for the North Gulf Coast, but even their amounts will diminish. Rainfall rates will diminish. And scattered showers Cook Inlet later tonight after some rain this evening. And periods of rain for the Kuskokwim Valley to the western Alaska Range, basically dry over the eastern interior there up across the Yukon Flats. Periods of rain for the Brooks Range and the Arctic coast, central and east side, lighter amounts to the west, and still an area of rain associated with that 1,002 millibar low over the eastern Seward Peninsula. And for Thursday, that low hangs right over the Seward Peninsula, keeping it cloudy with a few showers around, cool temperatures well below normal, and rain, periods of, up along the eastern Brooks Range of the eastern Arctic coast, scattered showers over the central north slope. Continued dry for the Tanana Valley and the upper Yukon Valley area with showers along the Alaska Range. Still some occasional light rain along the North Gulf Coast and northern Cook Inlet into the Susitna-Manuska Valley, but that tending to diminish in the afternoon, just some drizzle over the Kodiak Island area, and now some clearing over the southern Panhandle. Could be some sun breaks anywhere in the southeast coast tomorrow, just some lingering isolated showers. So drier conditions moving in there, and then moderate amounts of rain with that next system and gusty winds moving into the Alaska Peninsula and Pribilof Islands, with gale force west-southwest winds there in the western Aleutians up to 40 knots in the forecast, and 30 to 35 knot winds for Adak and Atka, with that tight gradient and that 978 millibar low pulling west or north of the western Aleutians. And for Friday, high pressure, Gulf of Alaska dries it out, maybe some clearing for the eastern North Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. Chance of showers with that weak low south of the high center there, and the trough may graze the north coast with some shower activity. Otherwise, the inside waters, especially over the central and southern areas, looking pretty good with some sunshine. Moderate amounts of rain with gusty winds moves into Kodiak Island and Bristol Bay, with rain up into the southern Kuskokwim Valley and the central Yukon Delta, with rain and wind down to the eastern Aleutians, drying out over the western Aleutians under high pressure, but the northern interior from north of the Alaska Range all the way up to the Arctic coast looking pretty dry, some lingering showers over toward the Canadian border. Lows tonight in the 30s, North Slope and Arctic coast, with lows in the lower to mid 40s out west toward the Bering Sea, and in the lower 50s or 40s to lower 50s, say around the Fairbanks area and Fort Yukon, with lows upper 40s to lower 50s, south central Alaska, mid to upper 40s for Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula, 45 to 50 out in the Aleutians, lower 50s Kodiak Island, and in the 50s to near 60 over the southern Panhandle. Highs tomorrow, 70 to 75 or so. Nice conditions there, southern southeast coast, mid 60s to the north, and cooler there in the Tanana Valley than today, down about 10 degrees or more. High forecast 64 in Fairbanks, otherwise up around 70 around Eagle. 50s south of the Alaska Range, Copper River Basin, south central Alaska, upper 50s to Kodiak Island. And in the mid to upper 50s for Bristol Bay, King Salmon could hit 61. Upper 50s for the Aleutians, and highs near 40 for the Arctic coast and into the 40s for the North Slope, and 50s to lower 60s there over the northern valleys. And for lows Friday morning, again in the 30s for the North Slope and Arctic coast, and in the 40s south of the Alaska Range, around 50 for Bristol Bay, upper 40s to lower 50s again for south central Alaska, and in the 50s for the Panhandle, mid 50s Kodiak Island, lower 50s in the Alaska Peninsula, and in the 40s out over the Bering Sea. Highs in the 60s now, maybe mid-60s for the central interior, mid to upper 50s, south central Alaska, 55 to 60 in Bristol Bay. Still some nice 70-degree readings there over the central and southern southeast coast with not too bad, mid-60s up toward Juneau to Skate.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather for Thursday morning. IFR from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, another area there. Mid and upper Yukon River, or mid and lower Yukon River Valley out to the Delta, across Norton Sound to most of the Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, and into the Kuskokwim Mountains. And then more IFR from northeast Bristol Bay up along and east of the Western Alaska Range. Patch there northeast Prince William Sound. Pretty good IFR to start there for the Yakutat area down across the southeast coast. Huge area of huge area of IFR pushing into the southwest Bering Sea, northeastward and eastward to about Nikolsky late tonight. Marginal VFR for the Pribilofs, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and the central Alaska Peninsula starting out VFR. And for the get the right key here for the afternoon time frame. Looking at widespread IFR, central southern Bering Sea, including the Pribilofs of the western Alaska Peninsula, and a zone up to St. Lawrence Island, holding over the at least the southern Seward Peninsula, and IFR persisting Arctic coast, north slope into the Brooks Range, and maybe a tad south there. But VFR looks like the central Copper River Basin up across the mid and upper Tanana Valley into the eastern Yukon Flats, and then a zone of VFR through the central interior becomes pretty widespread over the Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay areas, but marginal VFR holding south central Alaska, North Gulf Coast, eastward to Yakutat, becoming VFR for the Panhandle in the afternoon. But IFR slipping up to southern Kodiak Island. And for the morning Friday, IFR, Arctic coast, north slope, again down to about the crest of the Brooks Range there, give or take. And then marginal VFR across the Noatak Valley, northwest coast, Kotzebue Sound, Selawik, those areas. IFR, western Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew Island, and most of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, right on up into Bristol Bay and pushing up into southern Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, IFR, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Yakutat, southern Panhandle IFR, but looks like the northern two-thirds will be VFR for the morning. And then for the afternoon, marginal VFR for all of the Panhandle and marginal conditions right along the North Gulf Coast, but covering Prince William Sound. IFR again developing on the eastern slopes of the Western Alaska Range, southern Kenai Peninsula, Arctic Coast, IFR, and the southwest interior out to the southeast and central Bering Sea, Pribilof southward to Amchitka Island, eastward to the Alaska Peninsula, IFR. Passes, Anatuvik, pretty easy ones there for both the Brooks Range, Anatuvik and Anagan IFR flying conditions. Lake Clark and Merrill, look for an upward trend in conditions throughout the day. I go IFR becoming VFR. Hopefully it becomes VFR, but conditions will improve throughout the day. Rainy, improving also, but not quite as good, probably staying marginal at best. And then windy, possible marginal VFR in the southern entrance, otherwise VFR. Isabel, marginal VFR. Mintasta, south side, possible marginal VFR, VFR to the north. Tanita, looks like occasional marginal VFR. Portage, mostly marginal. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR to VFR. Freezing levels, 6,000 feet over southern Alaska, about that even up to the north there. The gradient, the thermal gradient out over the Bering Sea, 2 to 14,000 feet over the central Aleutians, 8 to 12,000 feet over the Panhandle. Icing, quite an area there coming into the southern Bering Sea, approaching the Pribilofs. Otherwise, central interior looking like several zones of isolated moderate rime icing, some considerable moderate possible in the eastern Arctic coast and up along the Prince William Sound area, North Gulf Coast. And for the jet stream, upper level low pulling eastward into the interior, so west-northwest 100 knots across the southwest part of the state, westerlies 100 to 115 over the Aleutians, and pretty good winds at 9,000 feet with that low over the southwest Bering Sea, 50 to 70 knots there, 45 knots Alaska Peninsula, southwest 45 across the eastern Alaska Range, and at 3,000 feet, 50 to 65 knot winds around that low there out in the Bering Sea, with the wind max pushing in with the front to the eastern Aleutians, east 35 for the western Arctic coastal areas. Turbulence, look for considerable moderate chop there, especially early in the day for the eastern Alaska Range up over the upper Tanana Valley, as well as the western Brooks Range DeLong Mountains. Pribilof Islands, considerable moderate turbulence, as well as all of the Aleutians. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
It's kind of hard to explain how important weather is to our job. I mean, it really affects everything we do.
In 2018, NOAA launches the GOES-S satellite, which takes its place in orbit as GOES-17. Working together with GOES-16, the two new geostationary weather satellites will provide constant watch over the United States and the Western Hemisphere, from the west coast of Africa all the way to New Zealand, helping monitor severe storms, wildfires, and daily weather patterns. Since its launch, NOAA's GOES-16 satellite has already demonstrated its critical capability for keeping our nation weather ready. Throughout the active 2017 hurricane season, GOES-16 delivered imagery with detail and clarity never achieved before, with 4 times greater resolution than previous NOAA satellites, and delivered this imagery faster than ever before, helping forecasters predict the path of a storm and where and when it will intensify. These accurate and timely forecasts allowed for emergency managers to prepare for evacuations, map flood areas, and save lives.
So the weather matters. The weather matters before the weather happens, and the weather matters after the event happens, because what we're able to do to prepare, allocate resources, provide information to the public through the media beforehand, and what we're able to do afterwards, how and when the waters are going to recede, so we know we can get vehicles with life-saving food and shelter equipment down a particular highway. All of that depends on the forecast.
In the GOES West position, GOES-17 will be able to provide critical data for the westernmost United States, Alaska, and Hawaii.
We're talking about getting data updates in just seconds, so we can quickly spot wildfires and closely monitor the wind direction and their intensity. The crispness of the data coming in at a faster rate will also help with fog forecasts. We can see the moment the stratus starts to develop or when it starts to move out.
Like GOES-16, GOES-17 carries a suite of advanced instruments, including tools for sophisticated earth sensing, lightning detecting, solar imaging, and space weather monitoring. As an equal partner in the sky, GOES-17 will expand coverage of the advanced baseline imager technology across the Pacific Ocean, allowing meteorologists and local officials to see severe weather systems developing in real time.
So instead of seeing something, say, this large, that as you zoom in actually gets kind of blurry, you're actually going to see something that is much more detailed.
In its GOES West position, GOES-17 will be able to monitor conditions in the western U.S. like wildfires, coastal fog, and atmospheric rivers when storms from the Pacific dump heavy rain and snow over the western U.S. GOES-17 will have a major impact on fighting wildfires in California. Up-to-the-minute information and crisp detail allows forecasters to spot fires faster than ever before, even before the first 911 calls come in, and to better track and predict the path of large, dynamic, and dangerous fires.
It's amazing to see what we can get and at the level of detail and the speed that we can get the information down into the ground that makes our decision-making way more accurate.
With a view of the Pacific Ocean, GOES-17 will also provide a critical eye over shipping lanes vital to the U.S. economy, protecting cargo and passenger vessels from dangerous ocean storms. GOES-17 will also provide a high-definition view over Alaska, resulting in better weather forecasts and improved monitoring of sea ice, wildfires, and volcanic ash. The advanced baseline imager on GOES-17 can distinguish between clouds, sea ice, and snow cover, a critical need during Alaska's dark, cloudy winter months. GOES-17's geostationary lightning mapper monitors lightning flashes, including the in-cloud lightning most prevalent in severe storms, helping forecasters determine when a storm is forming, intensifying, and becoming more dangerous. Thanks to GOES-17, emergency managers will be equipped with more accurate weather predictions and faster warnings, providing a real impact, saving lives, and protecting infrastructure. Watching over Earth from 22,300 miles above, GOES-S will provide vital data to our weather-ready nation.
Hi, I'm JPSS. I'm a high-tech weather satellite that orbits our planet. I do something called a polar orbit. I circle the Earth from North Pole to South Pole, over and over, while the Earth spins. While I do that, I get lots of information about what's going on around the globe. I watch storms, clouds, and rain. I take the temperature of the ocean, measure air quality, ozone health, and take pictures of the land and sea. This information is used for all kinds of things. It helps us take care of our coasts and oceans and all the amazing things that live there. It helps us monitor harmful weather events like floods and droughts and measure the health of the environment. Most importantly, it helps us predict weather 3 to 7 days in the future. That means I can be a big help ahead of storms, where future warnings are important. I send information to the National Weather Service. They use the information to create forecasts. The forecasts are shared with people all over the country to help prepare for weather emergencies. So you look to the sky and wave. I'll be flying by.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Moving on to marine forecasts. Pretty light winds out along the coast of the Panhandle tomorrow. Variable winds 5 to 10 knots with 5 to 6 foot seas. Although the north coast, looking at southerly winds, it's 15 knots, seas up to 7 feet. And for the Clarence Strait zone there, northwest winds 15 knots. Light variable winds for the central inside waters, southeast at 10. Down from today, definitely, for Lynn Canal. And for the outlook for Friday, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, southeast winds 10 knots. Clarence Strait, light northwest breeze at 10 knots with seas no more than 2 feet over all of the inside waters. And along the coast, central and south coast, variable winds at 5 knots, seas 5 feet. And for the north coast, west northwesterlies at 10 to 20 knots with seas up to 6 feet. Prince William Sound, southeast winds 20 knots for Thursday with 3 foot seas. North Gulf Coast, southerlies 15 to 20 knots. South 15 for the Barren Islands. Southwest winds 15 knots for Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, south winds 20 knots with 5 foot seas. And then on Friday, those southerly winds become northeasterly for Cook Inlet at 10 to 15 knots. East winds 30 knots. Small craft advisories both for the Barren Islands and the Kamishak Bay area for 30 knot winds. Light variable winds at 10 knots for Prince William Sound and the eastern North Gulf Coast. Western North Gulf Coast winds will be southeast at 15. Kodiak Island for Thursday, south to southwest winds 15 knots. The Alaska Peninsula, east-northeast winds 15 knots. And Bristol Bay looking for light winds from the southwest. And then those southwest winds increase to 25 knots out of the east for Bristol Bay on Friday. Alaska Peninsula, south to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. And east-southeast 20 to 25 knot winds in store for Kodiak Island. For the eastern Aleutians, gale warnings tomorrow for south to southeast winds 30 to 35 knots. South to southwest winds 30 knots for the central Aleutians. And gale force 40 knot winds from the west and southwest west of Adak to Shemya. And those will become northwest gales on Friday from Shemya to Amchitka Island at 35 knots out of the northwest. And central Aleutians, west-northwest winds 30 to 35 knots. And 20 to 30 knot winds from the south to west for the Fox Islands. For the Pribilof, southeast winds 30 knots for the day Thursday. Southwest coast, 10 to 15 knot winds from a varying direction. East winds 20 knots there for the St. Matthew Island area, and northwest at 20 with 7-foot seas for St. Lawrence Island. And for Friday, for Norton Sound, east winds at 20 knots with 3-foot seas. St. Lawrence Island, northeast winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Yukon Delta coast, small craft advisories, northeast winds 30 knots with 8-foot seas. And small craft advisories also for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, south of Nunivak Island, where winds will be east at 25 knots. And for the St. Matthew Island area, small craft advisories, north winds 30 knots, seas 11 feet. Pribilof Islands, northwest at 20 with 7-foot seas. And moving up to the Arctic coast, we've got small craft advisories along all the zones up there for the central and or for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, north to northeast winds at 25 knots, central coast northeast at 25, 30 knot northeast winds for the western Arctic coast down to Cape Thompson to Wales, northeast winds 25 knots with those seas 8 to 10 feet. And for the day Friday, much lighter winds along the coastline up there for Friday. Wales to Cape Thompson, east at 10. Cape Thompson to the western Arctic coast there, northeast at 20. East winds 15 knots for the central coast, and over toward Demarcation Point, Barter Island, winds will be northeast at 15 knots. For tonight, front spreading gusty winds and rain eastward there across the central Aleutians, with the main low center producing gale force winds back to the western Aleutian areas. Look for rain, heavy at times, especially this evening. Begins to lighten up toward morning, especially over the Panhandle. It becomes a little more showery, but periods of rain continue for the North Gulf Coast, Kuskokwim Valley, and the North Slope on out to the Arctic coast. And then for tomorrow, kind of rainy and cloudy over south central Alaska. A few lingering showers over the Panhandle, but drying out, mostly sunny for Bristol Bay. Big storm coming into the eastern Aleutians, pushes more rain into the southwest interior on Friday, but the central and northern part of the state looking pretty dry, and the Panhandle still a chance of showers.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.